Hey there, welcome. It is good to have you with me today. We've got someone from Panama City, Florida. Hi there. I hope I'm saying your name right. Yesenia? I hope I said that right. So good to have you with me, though. Welcome, welcome. And we've got some new people here. That's exciting. And I got it right. Yes, yes, good job. All right. So if you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, you know I've got two missions in my business. The first one is that I mentor practitioners who are struggling in their businesses because they spend their own time unpaid and after hours creating programs. And my second one is to teach the truth about iridology and its proper application in the wellness practice. So with that in mind, let's dive in. I'm going to encourage you, ask questions as we're going, make comments as we're going. You find that chat box. And if what you're asking fits in with where we're at, I will absolutely be answering those questions for you. And for those of you who watch this on the replay, I'd love it if you would take a moment to like the video, drop a comment, share it, subscribe to my channel, all that good stuff to make these videos more visible to more people. So let's start with looking at the idea of assessing versus diagnosing. So when we diagnose, we state facts, right? We state facts. And often when we're doing it with iridology, it's happening from a very poor quality image like the one you're seeing here, right? This image is not clear enough to say much of anything. We've got large reflections of light. In here, we've got reflections of the eyelashes, which sometimes can't be helped, but we've got lots of light. Here, it's too far away. We've got reflections from the camera the phone that they were using. That's in here too. And all of these things obliterate things that we need to see. And if we can't see it, we can't assess it. How can you diagnose something if you can't see it, but people do all the time? They'll name a disease. Remember, diagnosing is to name a disease, to name it, and then to name a remedy. With iridology, even when we've got great photos, we never name a disease and we never name a remedy. We're looking for tendencies and patterns. We're looking for inherent predispositions. Think of it as epigenetics, right? Think of it as giving us guidance for the questions we need to ask and the things we need to offer up to our client. So this is what one of my students said, or this is what was said about that photo, rather. This is what was said about that photo. This is not one of my students. This looks like an allergic constitution with lots of inflammation. Are you seeing the diagnoses here? They're calling it an allergic constitution, but lots of inflammation. And then they're dictating what needs to happen without knowing anything about this person. They're strictly going from the eyes. Remove from our diet any dairy products, gluten, sugar, or processed foods as much as possible. Everyone's going to get better with doing things like that. That's not specific to this eye. Give her easy to digest foods, organic fruit, vegetables, nuts, and nut butters, good protein like fish and tofu, hummus, tahini, and a little honey if you need to sweeten something. You could also give her banana and blueberry smoothies made on almond milk with some protein powder. This should help. So I see this as a huge problem because we've only got eye photos that are very poor photos to boot, and we have no background. We have no idea where this person lives. That's really important when we're making dietary recommendations. We have no idea what their basic diet is. We have no idea what their lifestyle is. And then the anonymous participant says, how long could it take to see any improvements? And then someone who's an admin smartly asks, anonymous participant, what sort of symptoms does she have? Right? So in dishing out this kind of information based entirely just on a very poor photo, this is exactly what gets us into trouble. This is exactly why so many people with medical training call iridology quackery. So it goes on to say no real symptoms per se, but she is pale with dark circles under her eyes all the time. She also catches every single cold or bug you can think of, and that makes me think she could have a low immune system at the moment. No rashes, no trouble with her bowels, no vomiting or headaches. Next comment, if it could be an allergy, is there a way to find out what type? Next comment, you can have allergy tests, but I wouldn't recommend that at the moment if it is just a poor immune function. Change your diet first. I do agree with that part. As I recommended, that's a lot of changes to make in one fell swoop, and see how she goes. It should make a big difference. You can give her some zinc and vitamin C and echinacea in children's form. So we were working with a child apparently to help build up her immune system. I want to tell you that one of the risks I see here again is that all of those dietary changes that were recommended, if you do all of this all at once, dairy, gluten, sugar, processed foods, if you do that in one fell swoop, you're going to get results, but you're going to go through a rough patch to begin with. The body will go into a self-cleanse, and then the person's going to feel really awful and have a lot more symptoms before that burns off, right? So we need to be aware when we are doing iridology that we do not diagnose, and we need to be careful about making carte blanche recommendations and attaching them to something, to a person, especially if we don't have a history, right? If we don't know that person's history, if we don't know what's going on with them, those recommendations are futile. Does this make sense? Let me know in the chat box if you think it's maybe foolish and perhaps dangerous to make recommendations based on a photograph without any history or knowledge of the person. Marie says, yes, very foolish. Yeah, I agree. Anyone else agree with that? If you agree with that, just give us a thumbs up or an, oh yeah, something. Yeah. Yesenia says, agreed. Fantastic. Fantastic. So again, diagnosing is naming a disease. If you go to a doctor, they'll run tests, and from those tests, they'll analyze the results. Then from there, they'll give you a disease name. And then from that disease name, they create a treatment protocol. It's not a bad thing to do. But we must remember that the stats of diagnostic errors are up to 20% mistakes on diagnoses based on autopsy findings. That was reported in the British Medical Journal, Volume 22, Issue Supplement 2. So maybe rather than working off disease names, maybe we need to look for root cause. Maybe rather than looking at only labs, we need to look at root cause. This is where iridology comes in. I'm not saying labs are bad. I often look at labs. My clients bring in labs every time. In fact, I ask them to bring in labs because I want to understand what's going on from that perspective. I want that to help fill in gaps of information that I might not get in answers from my clients, or that I might not see in the eyes. So maybe we don't want to name diseases. And we've all heard of cases where once a disease label is attached, it's really hard to remove it. And all the treatment that happens by that disease name. And we want to avoid that. So additional questioning that we need to answer is, what value does iridology have in assessing client needs and creating wellness programs? Well, we're going to look at some photos and see how this works. We're going to do some casework here. All right. So this is, these are the eyes of a young man who was in his early 30s. His chief complaint is that his stomach never feels good. He has frequent episodes of heartburn. His energy is very unstable. He never knows if he's going to have enough juice to get through the day or through the next hour even. His diet has lots of good quality whole foods, including proteins and vegetables. He has 2 to 3 cups of coffee per day and a very active lifestyle. So he's got a lot of good things going for him. He's got a good foundation for us to build on. So as we look at his eyes, we've got white in here, especially hanging on to the collarette, but we've got other areas that are a little bit whiter than the rest of the eye as well. And this suggests that he might have one of those inherent predispositions or an epigenetic leaning that suggests that he might, his body might hold on to too much acid. He might be systemically overacidic. So again, I want you to think of these predispositions in terms of epigenetics. We inherit many genetic possibilities. How we nourish our bodies, how we deal with stress, how we allow ourselves to rest, all of these things determine how these epigenes are going to function, right? Sometimes we want an epigene turned on, sometimes we want it turned off. Not all epigenes are bad, and every epigene does more than one thing. So sometimes when we turn one epigene on, there's a positive response and a negative response, and we have to figure out how to mitigate that while maintaining the benefit of this thing. So we need to have these conversations with our clients to understand what they're currently doing for their health. When we have this darker area towards the center, so inside his collarette, and especially here at the very inner edge of his iris, this suggests an underfunctioning stomach. When we have these little patches of pigment, they're just the right color to suggest that he might be inherently predisposed to some kind of a liver imbalance or a pancreas insufficiency. Now, I want you to remember, and if you've been with me for more than a couple of these, you'll remember this clearly. There will be a quiz, so take notes, right? The liver does over 500 different jobs. Most people think of it only as it detoxifies or it filters the blood, and those are a tiny part of what it does, right? So when we see these, we think, oh, what does the liver want to do today? Right? Because depending on how this body is nourished, how he manages his stress, how much rest he gets, how just all of these variables, how much physical activity he gets, will determine how the liver is going to function on every level. Maybe more rest makes a part of it function better, but maybe it makes a part of it function not quite as well. Maybe stress makes certain parts function better, but other parts not quite as well. And so we need to have this conversation. We need to not isolate one marking and ascribe to it a specific function or response. Does that make sense? That one marking can mean many things, and that's why we need the context. If it does, give me context in the chat box. So when we're looking at this and we see digestion and protein, yeah, we've got a lot of other indicators in here, but these are the important ones. We've got some predisposition to some liver. We don't know what for sure. We've got some potential issues with maybe breaking down his proteins. And that's where we want to start. And we need to ask questions around that, right? So with proteins, we need to understand, does he feel like he's digesting his protein? What would be some indications that he's not? He might have poor wound healing, which would be not digesting protein. That can also be an issue with the liver not functioning properly. He might have blood sugar uneasiness, and that might be where his unpredictable energy is coming from. He's consuming protein, but he's not breaking it down properly, so he's not getting long haul energy out of it, right? It might be that, what else? He might be passing a lot of gas. And if it's a protein gas, it's going to be really awful, like eye-watering room clearing. It's going to be horrible, horrible, right? So those would be some things that we would want to ask him about. Now, what we did with him is we recommended quitting coffee. Now, coffee is an interesting duck. It can actually help us with certain liver functions. I know, aren't you shocked I'm saying that? But the things that it does for those liver functions don't outweigh the damage the coffee does in so many other areas. I can mimic the coffee benefits 1,000 other ways, but it's really hard to undo the damage. So with this, we needed to have him quit coffee. We needed to teach him how it damages the stomach lining and a whole bunch of other things, right? Maria is saying low stomach acid. And it's what we're seeing here is that predisposition to low stomach acid. We don't know yet what else he's doing, that could be supporting his stomach, but we know the coffee's not helping him at all, right? We added protein to his breakfast, but we've just said he doesn't digest it well, right? When we added protein, we added to him some hydrochloric acid, some betaine hydrochloride. And we talked to him about why it is so important that he not have coffee and why it's so important that he have protein first thing in the morning, right? So this is really interesting because, you know, whenever I suggest to someone that they should take coffee away because of their symptoms and what I'm seeing in their eyes, there's always, well, no, I'm only having 1 or 2 cups a day and everybody else is doing it. Why can't I? And I really like my coffee. I need my coffee to wake up. My coffee helps me think more clearly. But the funny thing is, after the first week, this fellow sent me an email. He said, I've been off coffee for a week. Yes, I had a headache for a few days. I am stunned and amazed at how clear my thinking is. And with cutting the coffee and adding the protein, how much more stable my energy is and how much better it is. So pretty exciting to hear that from him. And, you know, he's been doing it for over 18 months now. And he still, when we touch base, he's saying, yep, I'm still feeling great. I'm still not on coffee. I'm still doing the protein. I'm still doing the hydrochloric acid, and I'm still feeling great. So when we're doing this assessment, you'll notice I did not say to him, you have low stomach acid. I did not say to him, your stomach lining is not good. I didn't say anything like that. What I did say to him was there is a predisposition. And when we combine your symptoms with what I see in your eyes, with what you've got for a diet, I understand where the problems are. Right? Yes, Yesenia says needs salt, sodium chloride, preferably in the form of Celtic sea salts. Yes, 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 not table salt. Absolutely not table salt. But yes, your Redmond salt, your Celtic sea salts, things like that. Yes, absolutely. So important. So, you know, if we were doing this as a diagnosis, we would be saying your stomach doesn't work. Your stomach has a problem. Well, we see that it does, but we're not going to put it in those terms. We're not going to diagnose it. We're not even going to tell him that you have low stomach acid. We might say you are predisposed to low stomach acid. Your symptoms suggest you might have low stomach acid. And then I will often say, let's do an experiment. Let's take away the coffee. Let's add some protein and some HCl. Let's see how that works for you. Right? So I'm not even prescribing. I do a lot of experiments with my clients, right? And they prove to themselves what works and what doesn't. We're going to look at 5 more. I think 5 more is what I've loaded into your client cases. This is a 10-year-old boy. And as his parents were saying, you know, he was being assessed for ADHD. And when I look at these are eyes that are very common with children who are diagnosed with ADHD. And so what we're looking at here really is these rings going around the eye, right? This tells me many things about him physically and how that physical chemistry is going to affect his nervous system and therefore how that's going to affect his behavior. So when we saw this, when I worked with this young man, again, the diet was standard North American. It was like Eggo waffles for breakfast. Lunch, he takes his lunch to school. We don't have lunch programs here. And so it was white bread, processed ham, processed cheese, a fruit roll-up kind of thing, which is mostly sugar, a drinking box, which is colored flavored sugar water, right? So it was not great. Family has 2 children. They're both very busy with evening activities. Supper would often be drive-through, or it would be pasta because that's really quick, right? But white pasta. And so not a lot of nutrition happening in the day. So with this young boy, and it was interesting because both his mother and father came to all of his appointments, which was wonderful. It was wonderful to see that solidarity. So we started with breakfast. Could there be some eggs? Could there be a multigrain toast with that? or a multi-grain homemade pancake. And I know not everybody has time to gourmet cook every day. So I suggested, could you batch cook a bunch of pancakes and then freeze them and just separate them with waxed paper in the freezer? Because then you can pop those out and put them in the toaster and they're ready to go in a second or two. Instead of pancake syrup and margarine, could you use butter and maple syrup? So these are all easy swap outs to elevate the nutrition, but I really wanted protein at breakfast time for him. Right, so that was the first thing. Easy substitutions at lunch again. A multi-grain bread, leftover meat from the night before as the sandwich meat, real cheese instead of processed slices. Could we get a really fancy water bottle and just take water? And instead of a fruit roll-up kind of thing, could we have a container of berries or some other kind of fruit? That would be fun. And, what could we do with this? And that was all doable as well. For the evening, because both parents work full time, and again, kids are busy, different lessons and sports and things in the evening, I suggested, would it be possible to do more crock pot meals, slow cooker meals, where you could get it started in the morning, chili or soup, or you can even make lasagna in a slow cooker, right? You use whole grain noodles and your cheese and your sauce and brown your meat and all that kind of stuff. And it can work really well. So I said, could you do that? Get that started in the morning. So when you get home at night, you've got real food instead of fast food. And they said, yeah, we could make that happen. Mom and dad were willing to work together to do this. Most of these were just easy trade-offs, right? Just swapping one thing for something that was better. Suggested that this young boy needed a protein snack right after school as well. Doing homework in the evening as a 10-year-old, it wasn't going very well. Because his blood sugars were wonky. His blood sugars were really wonky. Within a couple of weeks of changing the diet and, in addition, working on his nervous system, giving him some nerve nutrients, we had him to where his parents were saying, this is remarkable. He'll actually sit to work on homework for 10 minutes at a stretch now. 2 minutes used to be tops with a lot of whining, but now he's getting it done in 10-minute spurts, which was great in just a few weeks. In a diagnostic situation, particularly if I was doing the old style ginseng iridology, I would have said, well, this little boy is headed for a nervous breakdown, which of course he wasn't. He just needed better nutrition because his body internalizes stress and he needed more support to handle that. The more stress you internalize, the more tired the adrenals become. The more tired the adrenals become, the more likely you are to have attention issues, right? And so by working that backwards and feeding the nervous system and feeding the adrenal glands, we were able to bring him back to a balance in his nervous system, where we avoided Ritalin for a couple of years. When he went into junior high, which where we live is grade 7, his parents said, we've seen a lot of improvement, but we're really concerned that it's not been quite enough. And they ended up putting him on Ritalin, which just broke my heart into 1,000 pieces, because I don't believe he needed it. These are the eyes of a woman who was in her late 20s. She and her husband had been married for a few years. They had had an ectopic pregnancy soon after they were married, and she lost that fallopian tube. By the time she came to see me, she had gained a lot of weight. She was up about 60 pounds from what she weighed when she got married. And her menstrual cycles had become very irregular. She'd been to the doctor, who ran some tests and said, I think you've got PCOS, which when I look at her eyes, it's like, yeah, you're a candidate for PCOS. Now, there's not just one set of markings that says PCOS. There are different things we see in different eyes that add to the likelihood that there could be PCOS, right? And so, what we've got here is we've got lots of lacunae like this. And for her, that was one of the first things that suggested she might be prone to hormone imbalances. And I wasn't surprised with the idea of PCOS because of her weight gain and the way her periods have gone so weird. And so, again, really important to avoid trying to diagnose, name a disease from markers that you see, right? What we see in the eye, this is an assessment tool, what we see in the eye, we need to combine with symptoms. And if we've got lab tests, if we do any form of muscle testing or anything like that, we need to be combining what we see in the eyes with all of the other sources of information we have. So with this young woman, she and her husband really wanted to have babies. They really, really wanted to have babies. And so as we're looking at this and seeing, yeah, you have that predisposition towards metabolic imbalances, we've got some work to do. With that, we put her on a very, very strict, what I would consider an anti-candida diet. Very strict, not because she had candida, but because it's the best way I know to get the sugars under control. Very low carb, high protein, good fats, and complex carbs in here. And so we got her working with that, and she dotted her I's and crossed her T's. She was absolutely religious with this, to the point where she lost 60 pounds in 3 months and was never hungry, right? We were getting her balanced. We got her menstrual cycles pulled down to where they could be fertile cycles. And then she conceived and had a healthy pregnancy. And they've gone on to have 4 more kids since then. So this is great. But again, I don't look at the eye and go, oh, you have PCOS. And even coming into me, you know, if I see this and she's got periods that are getting further apart and she's got weight gain, I'm not going to say, you have PCOS. I would ask her, has anyone ever suggested that you might have PCOS? I want to hear if someone else has given her that diagnosis. If they have not, I'm going to look at her eyes and I'm going to look at these symptoms and I'm going to say, well, here's what I know. When we've got cycles that are this far apart, that is one of the key indicators that we are looking at PCOS. When we have weight gain like this, that suggests that there may be some insulin resistance. PCOS and insulin resistance are best friends. So when we see those two things together, and I see these things in your eyes, I have to wonder if maybe that's what we're working at. What do you think? Give it back to the client. Is this making sense? That how we don't tell a client what's wrong? If it is, give me a makes sense in the comments box. It's not our job to name diseases. It's our job to get to the root of the problem, right? Who cares what we call it, as long as we're finding the right solutions, right? That's what's going to keep us safe as we do this. I do a lot of work with infertility, particularly PCOS and high-risk pregnancy, and a lot of work with menopause. So this is another one of my clients. She came to me, she and her husband came to me. They're Asian and in their early 30s. And they had been trying for 3 years to conceive, had no luck. They'd been to the fertility clinic, spent a small fortune there. It's a good thing they both have really good jobs. They were given Clomid and metformin, no dietary advice, which of course isn't surprising. So, you know, when we look at this eye, some iridologists might think that what they need to work on is this right here, because this is sitting at 25 minutes, which is in the ovary zone, right? But I want to tell you that, yeah, we do need to work on that. We're not going to make this go away. That is a bit of an indicator. Just let me grab my map. I'm not thinking my notes are quite the way I want them to be. No. Right, this is the left eye. So that is our ovary zone. Fantastic. Again, this is a client who her cycles were 90 days apart. That's a non-fertile cycle. You'll never get pregnant on a 90-day cycle, at least never get pregnant and hold on to it, right? She'd never had a miscarriage. And so as we're looking at her eyes and we see that she internalizes her stress, what does that mean for how she uses her B vitamins? We see that she's got some nerve involvement with the ovary. The nerve feed to the ovary is not going to be absolutely brilliant. And we've got little bits, little teeny fleck of pigment here, little teeny fleck. I believe that's pigment. I believe it's a black pigment. It could be a defect sign. At any rate, it was enough to make me think I needed to treat it like it was a pigment. And so I made sure she was getting methylated Bs, because when we're looking at PCOS, there's a much higher incidence of MTHFR. And with MTHFR, we need methylated Bs. Okay. Okay. So when we look at this, again, this is telling us that we do need to support the ovaries. Some of you, any of you heard that these tell us that there's parasites in the body? Have you heard these called parasite lines? If you have, give me parasites in the chat box. No? Oh, good, Marie, you've been protected from that. So good. Any of the rest of you heard these referred to as parasite lines? Joe, yeah. Yeah, your training is old like mine. And Martha, you too. Yeah, you've been around for a while and you've heard the old myths as well. These are not parasite lines. We can do all the parasite cleansing we want, and these lines are not going to go away. That's not to say that North Americans don't have parasites, because we do, but it is to say parasites don't change your genetic structure, and therefore they will not change the structure of the iris. Okay, so these are not parasite lines. So this does tell us that there is a nerve feed interruption to the ovary, and we need to make sure that nerve feed is functioning properly. So when we take a step back, again, we see these contraction furrows, right? We've seen lots of these contraction furrows in this eye. And so we need to know, how does she handle stress? And that means we're going to be looking at nervines, but especially because she's trying to get pregnant, we want to work with B vitamins. We want to work with diet. She had a typical Asian diet, which is sugar, 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 sugar. We had to clean that up. And we needed to get her to be physically active. We also, again, needed to get the Bs that were methylated. With the work we did with her diet, and again, for her, because we needed to do this really hard diet shift, which I typically like to avoid doing. I like to do diet step by step by step. But they'd already been trying for 3 years to get pregnant and hadn't gotten anywhere. So as she and her husband were sitting here, and I'm, again, going to the anti-candida diet, because it's just such a great, clean diet, a way to really get rid of the garbage. And her face is getting longer and longer. And I can see she's thinking, we're never going to have a baby. I cannot do that. Her sweet husband reached over and took her hand and said, honey, don't worry. I'm going to take over all the cooking. You just eat what I make. He kept his word. He kept his word. And he lost 20 pounds, which he didn't actually need to lose, but he felt better without it. She did not need to lose any weight, which is very atypical of PCOS type 2 diabetes. But her cycles normalized. And as we were talking together, and she's telling me her cycles are 90 days apart, I asked her, have they ever said anything about PCOS? Oh, yeah. And because I know PCOS and type 2 diabetes are best friends, I asked, and have they mentioned anything about type 2 diabetes? Oh, yeah. Yeah, they've said I've got both. All right. So we did that really strict diet. We got her down to where her cycles were 35 days, down from 90, which is pretty impressive. And it took us quite a few months. It took us 18 months from our first appointment for them to come in with a positive pregnancy test. But then she had a perfect pregnancy with no gestational diabetes. Right. Now, in all of that, I didn't diagnose anything. I did not name a disease. I saw symptoms. I saw markers in the eyes that correlated to the symptoms. And it led me to ask if anybody else had ever given those diagnoses. Right. So I'm not diagnosing. I'm assessing. I am deducing. But I am not naming the diseases. You know, if she had said, what do you think is wrong? I would have said, well, I think your diet has really messed up your blood sugar levels. And I think that that has maybe messed up your hormones. So the thing we need to do here is get your blood sugars back in line through dietary correction. And that will likely bring your hormones around for you. Right? So we can say what needs to be said without naming a disease, right? Right? And that's what we want to do here. Now, are any of you on this call licensed medical professionals, registered nurses, medical doctors, chiropractors, anything like that? Any of you? I don't think so. I know most of you. NP, nurse practitioner, Yesenia, nice nurse practitioner. You might be able to diagnose because of your licensure. However, do not ever diagnose from iridology. Use iridology to corroborate your findings from medical tests or from other assessments, but never say iridology said you have this disease, right? We don't do that. So the rest of us are not licensed medical practitioners, right? So we are not going to name diseases. We are going to talk about predispositions. We may even talk about similar cases. I had a similar case to this a few months ago, and this is where we started. This is where we ended. And Yesenia says, yes, I can diagnose in my primary care setting, but not in my functional medicine setting. Yes, yes. So the iridology would come in very handy for you to work in conjunction with your other assessment tools to help narrow down the focus of what you want to be working on and to give you information about what's going on in the body or what the genetic tendencies are. All right. I like working with nurse practitioners as well. They bring in that nursing background that is oh man, you can just do so much with this when you've got the nursing background. So I've been teaching a lot about iridology right here, but I want to introduce myself. I know many of you, I know some of you very well. My name is Judith Cobb. I am one of only 10 level 3 IPA certified iridology instructors in the world. I was one of the first 3. I've been studying iridology and holistic health since 1979. You can do the math. That's getting way up there in higher numbers. I've studied iridology under 8 different teachers, 3 different styles, and I absolutely adore working with holistic health. I've written many books that were self-published and self-distributed, things like Pregnancy Naturally, the Herbal Birth Kit Handbook, Healthy Kids Naturally, Essential Guide to Nature's Sunshine Products, Biokinesiology and Color Therapy Level 1 and 2. And the only book that is still available, and it's available only to my students, is the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology textbook. I've also created and taught many courses, many herbal courses on different levels, biokinesiology and color therapy. For a while, I was a certified prenatal educator. That was a lot of fun. And of course, now I teach iridology using IPA approved courses. So stay with me to the end, and we're going to talk about how you can get into those courses. And some of you are in those courses. Some of you have done some coursework with me. So this is lots of fun. I'm also a natural nutrition clinical practitioner and affiliated with these 2 fantastic Canadian nutrition organizations. And I'm a master herbalist, so I'm affiliated professionally with the Alberta Herbalist Association. I like to integrate nutrition and herbology into all of my teaching, and particularly when it's a course. It helps students to draw on what they know and to begin to bring what they know into their practice of iridology. And that makes iridology even more powerful. Here's another case for us to look at. So again, this is another fertility case, although she didn't know it yet. She was only 20 and she wasn't trying to get pregnant. She was not sexually active. Her real concern was she was gaining weight. She had been away at university. She came home for Christmas. And in that first semester of university away from home, she gained 20 pounds. Tell me which girl on the face of the planet wants to put on 20 pounds? Not many of us, right? So what do we generally ask when we're working with someone who says, I've been putting on weight? What are some of the first questions you would ask? I'll give you a minute to type in your answers. What are some of the first questions you would ask when someone comes in saying they've gained a lot of weight in the past few months and they don't like it, they want it to stop? What have you been eating? Yeah, what is your diet? So important. Anything else? What is your diet like? How's your stress level and sleep patterns? What has changed in your life? Ooh, these are good questions. These are very good questions. Anything else that you can think of? If you're typing something, keep typing. So those are some of the ones that I came up with as well. I wanted to know about her physical activity. Joe is also asking, what have you been digesting? That's a good thing. But where do we go from there? Because that's good information, but it doesn't give us the answers we need. So I started to ask deeper questions as I looked at her eyes, because I saw this right here. Okay. Do you see this coming around here? This is called the collarette. And normally it is literally adhered to the surface of the iris. Right here, the collarette is lifted right up off the iris. And we know it's lifted because this is shadow. If we look on this image up here, what we're looking at is right in here. And we've got the shadow really, really clear right there. Shadow from the lights here. So when we have this lifted right up off the surface of the eye, so you could take a microscopic pin, a really thin pin, and literally slide it right under that little fiber, right? That in and of itself tells me that one of the things we've got a predisposition to here is blood sugar imbalances. Okay. So she's gaining weight. I see this, that makes me know there is an inherited predisposition towards blood sugar imbalances, to sugar issues, right? So when I saw that, I knew with the weight gain, I had to ask her about her menstrual cycles. And I asked her, tell me about your menstrual cycles. Are they regular? She said, yes. And I said, so does that mean every 4 weeks-ish? And she said, oh, they're usually 4 weeks late. Okay, so help me understand. Does that mean they're typically 8 weeks apart? She said, yes. PCOS, right? PCOS. Now, she'd been to the doctor. The doctor had run labs, which she brought in to share with me. And the doctor had simply said, you are postmenopausal. Your hormones tell me you are postmenopausal. She's 20 years old. Anyone else see a problem with a doctor lobbing out a diagnosis like that? Yeah, Marie says, wow, like you're postmenopausal, nothing you can do about it. Go home and just live with it, right? So we started working with her. She was away at university, like she was leaving for university again the very next day. So questions for her. Do you have, how are you eating? Where are you getting your food? She was eating on the campus meal plan. Yikes, right? And Yesenia says, I see and hear that all the time from my FM clients. Absolutely, absolutely. So she's eating on the campus meal plan. And so I asked her, do you have a kitchen in your apartment? Yes. I knew she didn't have a car at university. And so I asked, where's the nearest grocery store? And she said, it's about 2 miles away. And I said, you're not getting any other physical activity. She'd already told me that she would, leave her apartment. She lived on campus, go to school, come home again. So really nothing significant for activity. And I said, would you be willing to walk to the grocery store twice a week to pick up groceries? And she said, yeah, I could. So, okay, let's talk about what this would look like. Could you do something like this for breakfast? Could you do something like this for lunch? Could you do something like this for your evening meal? And as we went through and we crafted a high protein, quality fat, low carbohydrate diet, she was going, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I can do that. She was only doing campus meal plan because it was easy, right? Not because it was her first choice, but it was just easy. So we got her doing that. And, with making her walk, holding a gun to her head, making her walk 2 miles to the grocery store and back. So 4 miles twice a week, not enough physical activity, but better than what she was getting before. I suggested going for a walk for 30 minutes a day, not trying to get to classes, just go for a good brisk walk. She's going to university in Hawaii, where I hear the weather is perfect all the time, right? So it's not like she's going to be walking in 30 below and snow up to her knees kind of thing, right? So we got her doing all of those things. And she sent me an email after she'd been away for about 5 or 6 weeks. And she said, wow, I'm starting to lose weight. My energy is better. And I've had 2 periods since I came back to school, and they were like 4 weeks apart, like perfect textbook, right? So what do we look at in here? Well, again, we've got this gateway arch. We've got contraction froze that tell us she internalizes her stress. That's going to change how she uses her B vitamins. We need the B vitamins for the liver to work better. We need the liver to work better, to take the carbs, to make the cholesterol, to make the hormones, and then to break the hormones down when they finish doing their job. So we've got to have the liver on board. And we need the liver to work with the pancreas to keep the blood sugars balanced, but we need the diet to provide the right fuel to do that. Does that all make sense? Do you follow the logic of finding the root here? This isn't throw a birth control pill at her. This isn't give her synthetic hormones to try to bring her back into balance, or that won't even bring her into balance, to hide what's out of balance, right? This is about give the body the nutrients it needs so that it can do the job it's supposed to do. That's why we do this. I couldn't diagnose her as having PCOS or insulin resistance, but it was pretty obvious from her symptoms. And from the labs she brought in, it was pretty obvious that something was going on. Even without mentioning PCOS and insulin resistance, the labs alone saying she's postmenopausal tells me I need to be looking at liver. I need to be looking at diet. And then it just makes sense to work with blood sugars on that as well. What has been your biggest aha so far in our class today? What's been your biggest takeaway, the thing where you went, wow, I did not know that, or I'm making a note of that to take with me? I want to see what your feedback is here. What's the thing that has resonated, that you've learned, or that has been reinforced for you? The approach to supporting the clients. Oh, so good, Marie. Martha says fast results are possible. Yeah. I tell my clients you only get the results you earn the right to have. If you're going to mess around with the instructions I give you and kind of do them a little bit sort of, well, you're going to kind of get a little bit sort of results. If you can buckle down, we will see results much more quickly. Now, again, that one Asian couple, 18 months of us working together before she got pregnant. We got our cycles down much more quickly than that, but it took us 18 months from start to pregnancy, right? All right. So powerful. Yes, Yesenia is saying, confirming how important diet and lifestyle is for improving countless symptoms and disorders. Oh, yes. Yes, yes, diet and lifestyle, absolutely. And isn't it great when we look at the eyes and we couple that with the symptoms and with the diet and the lifestyle, it all comes clear. The eyes help us justify what changes need to be made for this person specifically. Not what changes need to be made because some medical association says we should make them. But we look at the eyes and we go, yeah, with those symptoms and these eyes, I know what changes you need to make to get your health back on track. Remember, the eyes are not going to change. We're not going to make things disappear that we don't want to see here by changing diet. This is genetic. This is your blueprint. This is like your fingerprint, right? It's going to be there to remind you forever to behave yourself. But you have a significant amount of input as to how this is going to function. Okay, so this is another fertility client. Like I said, so many of my clients are young couples that are trying to get pregnant. This is a couple that have been trying for a year with no luck. Now, with a set of eyes like this, if you weren't taught how to find the questions to ask, like if you know iridology, but you weren't taught how to ask questions or how to add the markers together, you might be tempted to focus on particularly this line squiggling down here. And it could be important. That could be important, as could this. I mean, they're going to add to our story at the very least. We might be tempted to look at all of this. And again, this fiber coming down here, because these are both ovary areas right here and right here again, right? So it's all ovary. And so you might be tempted to just focus on those. But we want to be looking for other things that add to our story, that help us have a deeper understanding, right? We don't want to look at every single marking, because every marking in the eye is not important to this moment, to what we need to accomplish now. So we want to cherry pick the things that are going to be of the biggest importance. Without the right training, again, you might be going in and isolating minor little details of things, and that's going to bog you down. It's going to slow you down, and it's going to make you want to give the client more information than they can absorb in one sitting. When I was first taught to do iridology, I was taught to go through absolutely every marker, every little thing, and teach my client about every little thing I saw. Well, my goodness, the appointments were 3 hours long. And my clients couldn't absorb that much. I could barely give them that much, right? It didn't serve them well. It's so much more important to cherry pick. So this woman also has that tendency towards hormone imbalances. She was lean, quite fit, loves to hike and bike and walk and all those kinds of things. But when we see all of this that is saying predisposition towards hormone imbalances, I needed to pursue that a little further. So I asked her, or this rather is with the fertility issues, suggests that we might be leaning towards maybe, oh yeah, there's that PCOS again. PCOS is becoming epidemic because of our diet. So when we started talking about her cycles were regular at about 28 days. Well, that's cool. What's the flow like? Yeah, it's a smear on the toilet paper. I never need a sanitary pad or anything. A smear on the toilet paper. Now, does that sound healthy and balanced to you? Marie says no. I agree with you, Marie. Anybody else agree with us that a smear on the toilet paper is not a menstrual flow? Yesenia agrees. Fantastic. So if you had someone come to you and they said a smear on the toilet paper, what do you think might be happening? And you're just thinking, thinking it through in your head. What might be happening with her endometrial lining? What do you think is going on with her endometrial lining? I don't want a big fancy diagnosis. I want to know, is it building up properly? Do you think it's sloughing off properly? Do you think there's maybe an issue with that endometrium? She said she'd had an ultrasound, and they said that the ultrasound said that her endometrium was thick enough, but she wasn't shedding it. That to me is a problem. That seems to me like there's something not quite right there. Now she's got a few tiny markers that suggest the need for B vitamins. This is going to be really tiny. See this little thing right here? Can you see this little teeny patch of orangey brownish pigment, sort of rusty colored pigment? That one right there. Okay, tiny, tiny. She's got a little patch of it right here as well. What we know is these little teeny flecks of pigment. There's a really cool study going on in Southern California that says that these little teeny flecks of pigment have a very high correlation to MTHFR. No way, like 95% correlation, right? Way up there, way up there. So without saying a word about that, she was trying to get pregnant. The prudent thing to do is to put her on a good prenatal vitamin as a part of her program. And with MTHFR, they need to have methylated Bs. So the prenatal vitamin that I use has the methylated folate and the methylated cobalamin, right? So good, so good. We kept working together. Her diet was low in protein, low in fat. It was clean, it was organic, it was from scratch, but there was a lot of organic carbohydrates, right? not nearly enough protein, not nearly enough fat. So we jacked those way, way up. And it took us a few months. She had almost no ovulation mucus either, right? So jacked those up. After a few months, she was starting to get ovulation mucus. We were having her chart her BBT and her ovulation mucus and her menstrual flow. And then I got an email saying, my period started and I need a pad. Yes, we win. We win. She did get pregnant a few months later. She was about 4 months into the pregnancy. Now, she was a very anxious woman. Every little thing, I would get an email that was just vibrating. She was so concerned about every little thing. So about four months in, I get an email that says, I did 23andMe. Oh my goodness, something's wrong. And I went, what do you mean? She said, well, it came back that I have MTHFR. Is my baby going to be okay? Should I have even gotten pregnant? She was so worried. So she was at work that day. And I said, can you just hop on a Zoom with me really quick? I need to show you something. So we hopped on a Zoom. I pulled up her photos and I said, do you see this right here? Little thing right there. I saw that in your very first appointment. It's not going to disappear. You didn't do anything to put it there. That's a part of your genetics. And that told me that there was a good chance that you might have MTHFR. So you know that prenatal vitamin we've been using? Well, MTHFR needs the methylated Bs, and that prenatal vitamin has your methylated Bs. I've had your back from your very first appointment. I want you tonight, when you get home, I want you to stop worrying right now, but when you get home tonight, I want you to start reading stories to your baby. I want you to start dancing with your baby. I want you to start singing with your baby. I want you to start being joyful with this baby, because this baby needs to know that there is no stress. This baby needs to feel that in the hormones and in how you're moving and all your energy. So I want you to start treating this baby like this baby is in your arms and you're loving this baby up and having the best time of your life with this baby. She was so relieved. So I followed up with her. We worked right through her pregnancy and for a few months later. And I would ask her, are you reading to your baby? Are you singing to your baby? Are you dancing with your baby every day? And as her belly would get bigger, yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. So good. Now, again, we can't tell by looking at the eyes whether she's got PCOS or not. We see that predisposition, in this case, to the metabolic imbalances. And we put that together with the symptoms. And in her case, with her basal body temperature, she tended to run a little low, which also then suggested that there could be some thyroid, which we worked on with her. The eyes are an assessment tool. They help to give us pieces. They help to fill in gaps and give us clarity, both in what we're seeing and in the questions we need to be asking. They give us direction. All right, how are we doing? How are you doing? Yeah, Marie says great. Marie's enrolled in the next course. Marie, I hope that's okay that I just said that. She's pretty excited to be coming in with us. Yesenia, great. So good, so good. Okay, so if you're serious about getting better at using iridology or maybe learning iridology as an assessment tool, then I'm just going to invite you to stay with me for the next few minutes because we're going to talk about learning iridology. The common challenge I see with health practitioners and professionals is that when they learn iridology, they often don't learn how to use it. They learn one mark means one organ or one problem. They don't learn how to connect the markings. They don't know how to find the root, to trace the markings back, to understand what needs to happen. They lack the ability to actually use this the way it can be used. Iridology is a skill that requires practical and critical thinking. So Yesenia, I don't know. Yesenia, do you have any iridology background already? Because registered nurses and nurse practitioners are really good at that minimal. Oh, okay, great. And I don't mean that, oh, as an, oh, I'm disappointed. Oh, I'm glad you got a little bit, but you've got potential here, girl. So, we want to look at learning iridology in a way where you can be mentored, where you learn the nuts and bolts, and then you're mentored to help develop the skill of using it, right? That's exactly how I work with Iridology. It's an assessment tool. It points the way to the questions we should ask. But again, when we learn it well, we learn how to think through an assessment to arrive at a good endpoint with it. For the past several years, I've been teaching wellness practitioners the art and science of iridology. Registration for the next cohort is underway. And so just a little bit about that. If you've already got anatomy and physiology under your belt, that is a prerequisite. I will not take anybody into the course if they don't have A and P, right? Because if they don't have A and P, I don't have time to teach you that. And if without that, iridology will not make sense. If you want to learn how the markers play off each other, if you want to learn what questions the eyes want you to ask, if you want to learn how to create programs your clients can be more successful implementing, and if you want to be mentored for the long term, think in terms of years, not just when you're enrolled in the program, then, and if you want to be able to assess quickly and accurately while creating deep rapport with your clients, and if you want to not have to spend hours creating reports and protocols, if you want to stand out as the go-to expert in your field, then we maybe should have a conversation. The Dynamic Iridology Assessment System is the only live, online, fully mentored class for health professionals who already have college-level anatomy and physiology under their belt, to help them streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. It actually enhances your client care so that you can stop working unpaid overtime to create programs for your clients, so you can stop overwhelming your clients with programs that are just not manageable, so that you can actually create client compliance, create programs that your clients can work with and be successful with, and create long-term retention. I've been at this for about 45 years now. I've got clients that have been with me for over 40 years. They've been with me almost since the very beginning. If you want to learn more than just iris markers, if you want to learn how those markers work together, and if you want to be mentored for the long term, not just for the few months that you're in a course, but for the long term, then we need to chat. The goal is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it competently so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition and herbology to confidently create doable client programs in your paid client sessions. The next course is starting next Thursday on the 27th. Yay! Registration is open now. And so, but you have to talk to me to enroll. I'm just going to put this in the chat box. I should have had it where I could copy and paste it, but I didn't. There we go. And we're going to change that to everyone. There we go. So if this sounds interesting to you, then there's the URL in the chat box. Grab that URL, schedule a time to chat with me about the course. Let's see if it is what you need right now. This is Elaine Hedden. She is a physical therapist in Alaska. She said, I'm a holistic physical therapist and I've wanted to study iridology for years, but just couldn't find the right instructor or school. Judith Cobb's iridology course has been the perfect fit. The caliber and organization of the course is professional. Her depth and breadth of knowledge of iridology, herbals, nutrition, and pathology is beyond most instructors and even some university professors. If you are a health professional wanting to expand your scope of practice by learning about the most up-to-date information on iridology, take the 20-week level 1 and level 2 class from Judith Cobb, worth every penny and every minute. I call my level 1 and 2 class Dynamic Iridology. It meets all the requirements for the International Iridology Practitioners Association to prepare you for the certification process. In the fully mentored program of Dynamic Iridology Assessment, you will receive 20 2.25 to 2.5 hour live interactive webinar classes that are recorded for playback on demand, just in case you have to miss a class or you want to review. There's live group mentoring twice each month via webinar. So you can bring cases and questions. You can bring business questions. If you've purchased an Iridology camera and you're having troubles, we can troubleshoot that with you. This is really a time for you to get whatever support you need. And the office hours will go on for you until I retire, right? So even after you finish the course, office hours, you're always welcome to come back. Oh, I need to fix this. It's not a me-we group anymore. We have a private community for my students and my alumni where we can hang out and ask questions and talk about interesting Iridology things. You receive a 225-page digital textbook. You can download that and 45 pages of study notes. We call them the cheat sheets. All right, so we've got all of your learning materials digitally prepared for you, so you don't have to keep buying books. And when you're in the fully mentored option, it includes the one-on-one mentoring that you need to prepare for certification with IPA. It also includes the case studies that are required by IPA for you to prepare for certification. And again, with all of that, the next course starts next week, February 27th. There are still a few seats left. I only take 10 students per course. And there we go. If you're thinking this is a good fit for you, use that link that I put in the chat box and let's meet to talk about it. Let's see where this will take you. So with that, my friends, thanks for being with me. Any questions before we wrap up today? We've gone a little long today. I was telling way too many stories. Any other questions or comments before we wrap up? So good. How often do you do the courses? 2, maybe 3 times a year. And Joe says that was great. Thank you. You're welcome, Joe. Good to see you. I'm in the process, Yesenia, of developing a whole bunch more courses and fleshing out some courses I've taught for a while. So I'm teaching this core dynamic iridology course a little less often, so that I have time in my schedule to teach the other courses that I'm developing that are only open to either graduates of my course or to certified iridologists, IPA certified iridologists. Yeah. Yesenia, even if you're thinking, I'd like to do this, but February 27th is too soon, I can't possibly do that, we could still have a meeting and talk about the details so that you can decide if it's something you want to be working towards doing, or is it, yeah, maybe not a fit, right? No high pressure sales tactics here. All right, so with that, I think we are going to be done. Thanks again for being with me tonight. It's been great to have you, and I look forward to speaking with you soon. Take good care. Bye for now.